scene opens with atmospheric, slightly spooky visuals. Misty forests, ancient ruins, flickering candlelight hello and welcome. As the leaves turn to rust and a chill whispers through the air, we feel it, that ancient, prickling excitement on the back of our necks. It's the season of shadows and secrets, the time we call Halloween. But have you ever wondered where this festival of frights truly comes from? Why do we carve pumpkins, wear costumes, and knock on strangers' doors for candy? The story is far older, richer, and more mysterious than you might imagine. It's a tale that stretches back thousands of years, woven from ancient rites, ghostly legends, and the very fabric of human history. So, light a candle, get comfortable, and let's journey back in time to uncover the true origins of Halloween. Our story begins over 2,000 years ago, not with pumpkins and candy, but with the ancient cults. In the lands that we now know as Ireland, the United Kingdom, and northern France, their year was divided by the seasons, and the most significant transition was the end of summer and the harvest. On the night of October 31st, they celebrated a festival called Samhain, pronounced Samhain. Samhain wasn't just a party. It was the most important day in the Celtic calendar. It marked the end of the light half of the year and the beginning of the dark, cold winter time, often associated with death and hardship. For the Celts, this night was magical, a time when the boundary between our world and the other world became thin, almost transparent. They believed that on the night of Samhain, the ghosts of the dead could return to Earth, walking among the living. This wasn't necessarily a scary thought for them. It was a time to connect with ancestors who had passed on. Families would set extra places at their dinner tables and leave out offerings of food and drink to welcome the spirits of their loved ones. However, this thinning veil also allowed other, less friendly spirits and mischievous fairies to cross over. To protect themselves from these potentially harmful entities, the Celts would extinguish their home fires to make their houses cold and unwelcoming. Then, they would dress up in costumes, often made of animal heads and skins, to disguise themselves as fellow spirits, hoping to fool any malevolent forces into leaving them alone. This is the earliest route of our modern tradition of wearing Halloween costumes. The centerpiece of the Samhain festival was the sacred bonfire. Druids, the Celtic priests, would build enormous communal fires on hilltops. These fires were seen as magical, possessing protective and cleansing powers. People would gather around them to offer animal sacrifices to the Celtic deities and to bring the community together against the encroaching darkness of winter. As the celebration ended, each family would take an ember from the sacred bonfire back to their own home. They would use this ember to relight their hearth, a symbolic act of carrying the sun as warmth and the community as protection through the long, dark months ahead. The fire was their defense against the cold and the supernatural. This ancient world began to change dramatically with the arrival of the Roman Empire. By 43 AD, the Romans had conquered most of the Celtic territory. As they ruled for the next 400 years, they brought their own festivals and traditions, which began to merge with the local Celtic customs. The Romans had two festivals in late autumn that were particularly relevant. One was Feralia, a day in late October when the Romans traditionally commemorated the passing of the dead. The other was a festival to honor Pomona, the Roman goddess of fruit and trees. The symbol of Pomona is the apple, and the incorporation of this celebration into Samhain likely explains the origin of the tradition of bobbing for apples, a game we still play at Halloween parties today. The Celtic festival was slowly transforming, absorbing new influences. The next major shift came with the spread of Christianity. The early Christian church had a clever strategy for converting pagan populations. Instead of trying to eliminate their beloved festivals, they would often absorb them, giving them new, Christian meanings. In the 7th century, Pope Boniface IV established All Saints' Day, a time to honor saints and martyrs. Originally, it was celebrated in May, but in the 8th century, Pope Gregory III moved it to November 1st, placing it directly on top of the Old Samhain festival. This was no coincidence. The church was trying to replace the Celtic Festival of the Dead with a similar, but church-sanctioned, holiday. The night before All Saints' Day, October 31st, became known as All Hallows' Eve, which over time was shortened to the name we know today, Halloween. The old customs didn't just disappear, though. They simply put on a new mask. The bonfires continued, but now they were said to ward off the devil. The costumes remained, but people began dressing as saints, angels, and devils instead of just spirits. Another tradition that emerged during this time was souling. On All Hallows' Eve, poor people would go from door to door, offering to pray for the souls of a family's dead relatives in exchange for food. They were given soul cakes, which were small, round cakes. This practice is considered a forerunner of our modern instead of promising prayers for souls. Children now shout trick or treat. But the core idea of going door to door for a treat remains remarkably similar. For centuries, these blended traditions thrived in the old world. But the story of modern Halloween is really an American one. The holiday came to America with the first waves of immigrants, particularly the Irish, who brought their rich folklore and customs with them. In the mid-19th century, when millions of Irish people fled the Great Famine, they brought their Halloween traditions to a new and fertile ground. Initially, Halloween in colonial America was a mix of different European customs. There were play parties, public events held to celebrate the harvest, where neighbors would share stories of the dead, tell each other's fortunes, sing and dance. Ghost stories were, of course, a central part of the entertainment. These early American celebrations also included mischief and pranks, a playful nod to the chaotic spirits once thought to roam on Samhain. It was in this American melting pot that some of our most iconic Halloween symbols were born. Take the jack-o'-lantern. This tradition originated in Ireland with a folktale about a man named Stingy Jack was a trickster who fooled the devil multiple times. When Jack died, God wouldn't allow him into heaven, and the devil, keeping his promise not to take his soul, wouldn't let him into hell. Instead, Jack was doomed to roam the earth for eternity, with only a single burning coal inside a carved-out turnip to light his way. The Irish would carve scary faces into turnips, potatoes, and beets, placing a candle inside to frighten away Stingy Jack and other wandering spirits. When immigrants brought this tradition to America, they found a new, perfect canvas, the pumpkin. It was larger, softer, and much easier to carve. And thus the American jack-o'-lantern was born. By the late 1800s, there was a movement in America to reshape Halloween. The pranks and mischief of the holiday had started to get out of hand, escalating into vandalism. Community leaders and newspapers began to push for a more community-centered, less frightening version of Halloween. They promoted parties for children and adults as a safe alternative to destructive tricks. The focus shifted from ghosts, pranks, and witchcraft to games, foods of the season, and festive costumes. By the early 20th century, Halloween was losing most of its superstitious and religious overtones. It was becoming a secular, community holiday. The tradition of trick-or-treating as we know it today was revived in the 1920s and 30s. It was seen as an organized and inexpensive way for the whole community to share in the Halloween celebration. It was a clever trade-off. Homeowners could prevent tricks from being played on them by providing small treats to the children. The practice was temporarily halted during World War II due to sugar rationing. But after the war, when the baby boom was in full swing, trick-or-treating became a true American institution, a rite of passage for generations of children. Halloween had completed its transformation into a holiday centered on kids, candy, and community. And so, here we are today. Halloween is now a multi-billion-dollar industry, second only to Christmas in consumer spending. We buy elaborate costumes, decorate our homes like movie sets, and consume mountains of candy. But beneath all the modern commercialism, the echoes of the past remain. When you put on a costume, you're channeling the ancient Celts, hiding from spirits in the night. When you carve a pumpkin, you're carrying on the Irish legend of Stingy Jack. And when you go trick, you're walking in the footsteps of medieval Sowlers. Halloween is a beautiful tapestry, woven from countless threads of history, belief, and human culture. It's a night where we can playfully confront our fears, remember those who came before us, and celebrate the simple joy of being together as a community, with just a little bit of magic in the air. From an ancient Celtic fire festival to a global celebration of spooky fun, the story of Halloween is a reminder that our traditions are living things. They change and adapt, but they carry the spirit of the past within them. So this year, as you step out into the crisp autumn night, remember the long, winding path that brought this unique holiday to your doorstep. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through time. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more explorations into the fascinating history behind our world. Happy Halloween, and may your night be filled with more treats than tricks.